Welcome to SweetLeaf Radio, a place where stories are told. Stories of outlaws and stories of in-laws. Come, join us and learn about the journeys of hardships and the journeys of success from the cannabis industry legends. My name is Christopher Day, and I'll be your host. Welcome, Amy Case King, to the SweetLeaf Radio podcast show. We're glad to have you. Just to let everybody know, I met Amy at a normal meeting here in San Antonio, Texas, a few weeks ago. She was one of the presenters. She is a lifelong advocate and lobbyist for cannabis. And let's just take a minute to listen to what she has to say about cannabis, about the future of cannabis in the United States, and what it is that she does in this space.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. It was really nice to meet you. And I'm excited that you're out here trying to talk to people and educate, which is basically what I do. I try to get in the space, in the state, local level, federal level, to discuss cannabis, how it became prohibited in the first place, what we've learned about cannabis and what we know about cannabis factually since that time. I think the biggest detriment to the United States is that cannabis has only ever been presented as a harmful agent, and the therapeutics are minimized, dismissed, hidden, and we need to move beyond that.
Certainly.
Our as an advocate, that takes on many levels. We have an explosion of people that are uninsured. We have exorbitant healthcare costs, even when you are insured. I work with patients on a daily basis who are either chronically terminally ill with an autoimmune disease, for which pharmaceuticals not only are expensive, experimental, and harmful to their bodies more than the benefit that they derive, they're the only option. And it costs them sometimes their home. It costs them their ability to work. And so these are financial and economical conditions outside of the cannabis arena that actually overlap into that. And so, I deal with cancer patients who, through their insurance, still end up spending $75,000 a year in treatment of their cancer. And when those all fail, it's like, well, you've already spent $75,000 over the last 3 years that we've been trying to treat you. And now your only option is this new and experimental immunotherapy, and it's not covered by your insurance. However, we've got these grant programs, and if you can come up with another $75,000, so here you are, a patient, having to make a life and death decision to put your family in debt over your disease for something that's not even guaranteed to work. And for $75,000, I think that cannabis is a much more cost-effective
treatment. Yeah.
Potential.
Definitely so.
Really. So looking at it just, again, from common sense standpoint, at where we are, no one is even asking the government to pay for their cannabis as medicine or as a therapeutic agent or another tool in the tool bag, however, it wants to be portrayed. So that's where we are in the United States. And so and we're in a great big experiment right now.
Sure.
We're in this huge experiment. There's, the discord between, should it be legally right for everyone who's an adult? And then you have the aunties that are like, but we already have alcohol and tobacco. Why do we need one more harmful thing? And again, that's not really my battle. That's not my issue. at all. I think that, arguments can be made for that venue, but I'm more of a patient advocate because I see lives being destroyed by bad health and chronic illness and inaccessibility to proper nutritional advice, proper alternatives like yoga and meditation and more of a holistic approach. So we need that. It's amazing that our healthcare system doesn't embrace these minimal cost events. Imagine if hospitals around the country were holding Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning yoga for people with chronic illness.
Right.
Or they did restorative yoga from people who are recovering from major surgeries and this thing. So this puts people, it empowers them. And see, that's something that cannabis does. Cannabis, in my experience, broadens my awareness, my ability to see outside of what's in front of me. And I think that's where the healthcare puts us in relation to whether we have control of our health outcome or not. I think traditional medicine doesn't allow that. Meditation and potential yoga gives that back, and cannabis can attenuate that as well.
Definitely so. Definitely so. Now, in your experience, well, first of all, how long have you been a patient advocate?
I say all my life because I just didn't know I was.
Well, hey, that's perfectly fine. Now, in your experience, could you tell us a story about one particular patient or one particular, case study that really touched you or touched your life, touched your heart? That cannabis, actually made a difference.
For me, it's veterans.
Veterans.
Yeah. So my husband is a deceased veteran from the first Gulf War. And, that was back when nobody really understood what was happening, Gulf War syndrome, depression, people,
sure.
Whatever. Nobody had a name for it. My husband died in 96. Less than 10 years later, I began taking care of an uncle who was a Vietnam veteran, and he struggled with PTSD. He had actual physical injuries. He was an engineer in the Vietnam War, so he actually lived in the villages, rebuilt villages that we decimated.
Right.
So he spoke fluent Vietnamese, even though that wasn't part of his rating or his training from the military. So he suffered a lot of emotional loss, leaving those people behind. And I didn't understand any of that. I became his full-time caregiver. He was a full-fledged alcoholic, drank to stay awake so that he didn't have to sleep. This was his constant paradigm. And of course, that caused health issues. Hepatitis was rampant in the Vietnam era because of the vaccination process, multiple syringe to patient or draftee, if you would.
Right.
Anyways, so it was with him and my consumption of marijuana. I kind of forced him because he would just be so belligerently drunk. And I'm like, man, just smoke this and chill the F out,
Right.
And he would finally sleep through a night, and then he would wake up in the morning. He would actually eat something instead of popping a beer first thing. Well, he would make his breakfast and pop a beer, but he actually had an appetite, is what I'm trying to say. So I guess that was my really first. So as we progressed with that and we're pursuing more financial benefits for him because of his debilitations related to his service, I had a lot of time and opportunity to spend in the VAs.
Sure.
During the return, so this was like 2004 through 2014. So wow. I was seeing a lot of the Iraq, Afghanistan war. So I was seeing this over barrage and overuse of these debilitating psychoactive SSRIs, pain control, lack of oversight of really trying to therapeutically help these guys instead of making them like zombies.
Right.
And that's my true experience.
Exactly. So you basically spent about 10 years watching this with patient after patient after patient and watching the medication that our government is feeding them and how it is affecting them in not such a positive way. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe that, conventional medication has its space as well. But you saw the value in cannabis in treating these types of things, whereas that's not federally or, allowed or legal.
Correct. It's a grave issue because as I watched, and again, I'm not an expert in anything except my own personal experience and where I was literally in contact with thousands of veterans over this 10-year period. Suicide among veterans is the most of any demographic ever. So we should be extremely alarmed about why 22 veterans a day, 20 to 22 veterans, because and those are military numbers. Those are numbers coming out of the VA. And I can, as a veterans advocate as well, I can assure you those numbers are inadequate because those are numbers of relative to those enrolled in the VA system.
I see.
Right now, what happened was, what was a really big issue, and I'm sorry this kind of goes off of cannabis, but what was happening is these guys were experiencing concussion injury in Iraq, in Afghanistan. They were having chronic TBIs. Then they were becoming agitated. They would become belligerent to the military process. For whatever reason, they were brought under court-martial for their behavior or lack of, the word I'm looking for, I'm drawing, out of command. And so they were getting discharged under other than honorable conditions or dishonorable conditions. They were mentally ill. They were physically injured, these guys, and they are not representative of the numbers in the VA system. So I'm sure that number is greater personally. But let's talk about, well, it might not be the guys that are on the street out of the VA system might actually be safer. And the ones in the VA system, I had to think about that for a second.
That's exactly right.
What are the side effects? You said that some pharmaceuticals, SSRIs are inhibitors. They reduce something. I don't think that's ever good to mess with Mother Nature. Would cannabis be a better solution? We don't really know if cannabis is better for that condition than an SSRI because all we've ever been allowed to research and apply is a harm model.
Certainly.
Okay, so when we put it back into perspective, why are 22 veterans a day committing suicide? What could be so grave in their life? And when we look at what the correlation is between these, is that they are induced with pharmaceutical medications that pose a side effect of suicide or homicide.
That's kind of a major side effect.
I mean, especially for someone who's already displaying a behavior that is defined as depression. Wow. I mean, the correlation, the causation is there, and we need to take a look at it. Just like we could say the same for any of these mass shootings. These are people who have been identified, whose pharmaceutical use for such conditions as depression or bipolarness, they commit acts of heinousy like we saw in Las Vegas.
Exactly.
And that's a very real issue. I think that may be being suppressed as well, what the real causation correlation to those events are. And another thing, as a patient advocate,